What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. It's going to be a in-depth role guide for all the weapons in Splatoon 3 as of right now. This is pretty much going to be just going over the weapons, not really individually, but just kind of explaining what each role does and kind of just giving you guys the gist. I won't be going like in-depth with every single weapon, and just kind of overall, mainly just like an overall summary and like kind of pretty much an in-depth explanation of like each of the three roles in the game and kind of how they play and what they're supposed to do. I know there's a lot of new players to the game. A lot of people just pick up a weapon and just hop right into ranked and just play a weapon. They'll play like randomly, and they'll just play however they want. This is mainly just because weapons in the game, they have their specific roles and their specific uses, and that's kind of what this is. It's breaking it down into more in depth and more like analyzing what they're meant to be doing and how they fit into a team. That's kind of mainly what this is. If you want to get into competitive Splatoon, or if you just want to rank up and you're playing with like a 4-stack or even like a duo, or if you want to go into ranks and just so you know like what your actual weapon, whatever you're playing, is actually supposed to do and how it fits into your current team, which is completely random depending if you're solo queue or whatever, but I think it's just really good to know, and it's just really good to know like what weapons actually are supposed to do and what you're supposed to be doing with your weapon and everything, and how it fits into a team comp. So that being said, if you guys like these types of videos, leave a like, subscribe. At least as far as I know, I don't think there's anybody that's even done this type of video, at least as when I'm recording this so far. I don't know when you guys will be seeing this, probably in the next couple of days, but that's even done a video like this, even close to this so far for Splatoon 3. So I'm going to try to make this as simple and easy to understand as possible while being as thorough as possible. So if there is some stuff I do miss, and those of you guys that have probably been playing the game for a while, if you played Splatoon 2 or if you've been playing in competitive or anything, if I've missed some stuff or I do not explain some stuff well enough, let everybody else know in the comments down below. That'd be really cool. I also do stream Splatoon 3, and I do stream a bunch of other games, Paladins, Apex Legends. I'll be streaming Overwatch 2 here in about a couple weeks, so if you guys are interested in that as well, I do stream about 3 times a week. Feel free to subscribe so you do not miss when I'm live. That being said, let's hop right into this. I'm going to start out with the easiest one. I'll probably have timestamps in the description as well, so you guys can just skip throughout the video if you're just here for a certain role or for a certain thing. But I'm going to start with the easiest one, which there are 3 roles in the game. There also are 4 people on a team, so that means that you're going to have pretty much two either of the same, and some that are going to have to like flex or kind of do that type of thing. So I'm going to start out with the easiest one, which is the backline / anchor type weapons, which I'll throw on screen right now for you guys. These are the weapons that are the long range weapons that are meant to stay in the backline and be the anchor for your team. What your job is really supposed to be is providing high amounts of damage and just overall like a really good team presence. You are the anchor to the team, so if your entire team ends up going down, which usually happens once in a while, you are the one there that is supposed to die the least on your team. You're supposed to die the least, and you are going to be in the position to where a lot of your team is going to be respawning, and they can actually super jump to you, and especially if you can lock down an area or like play in a certain area, they're going to be the ones that are super jumping to you most of the time, and just being able to get back into the game quickly, especially if like your frontliners, your slayers die, or like your supports and mids die. So that's mainly what your job is. A lot of the longer range weapons, the slower firing weapons, are the ones that just have really high damage and really good range. They're pretty self-explanatory. Your chargers, your splatlings mostly got the tri-string bow in that as well for the new game. A lot of other stuff like your longer range weapons, ballpoints, explosure, like all that type of stuff. It's really easy to kind of just know what the backline it kind of is. That's really kind of what it is. It's pretty self-explanatory too. It really is. Really easy to do. Like you're the one in the backline providing cover fire and just like an overall damage presence at any point in the game. You are not the front line. You are not supposed to be contesting the objective. You are there to provide consistent damage, consistent ults, place for your team to respawn and super jump to you to get you guys into the game back as fast as possible over the other enemy team, and overall just to hold down the team. You are the pretty much the glue to your entire team to hold it down, especially if your entire team gets wiped or the rest of your team gets shit on. You're supposed to be the one that stays alive, or at least tries to stay alive. I know it's difficult sometimes, especially when you get rushed by an entire team, but still. Pretty self-explanatory. Not really much else to really say about that. The backline slash anchor role. That's really what it is. Nope. Up next, we got the support slash mid-tier type weapons, mid-range weapons, if you want to call it that. Now, these are the weapons, like, these can fall into a couple different categories. There's weapons that kind of fit into a support and a mid, and there's ones that fit mainly support, and then there's ones that fit mainly as like a mid-range weapon, but they don't really have like any support type of qualities. These are mainly the weapons that just paint. They either paint, or they're the ones that have specific ults, tacticals, or like abilities, or like the way the weapon plays to either lock down an area or like an objective or play like a certain part of the map. As example, the Brellas and the Blobber. The Blobber and the Brellas. The Brellas are able to win 1v1s really easily. They can play as more of like a frontline, but they're considered a support because they're usually locking down an area and they're playing around their kids and stuff like that. And then same with the Blobber, because that has a lot of AoE and it's able to bounce shots and stuff off of walls. And it's more of a support kit, but it can be played as like a mid-type weapon as well. So it's mainly that your weapons that you can play at like a medium range, or the weapons that are close range and have really good support type of specials and just paint really well. A good example of that is like stuff like the arrow spray, which I wouldn't really say is a really good example because it's kind of a bad weapon right now, but it falls into the support category. Or stuff like the Rapid Plaster Pro. Like the arrow spray paints incredibly well, and it's able to spam ults incredibly fast. And it's mainly a support weapon. That's what you're only really going to be using it for. You're not going to be using it in any other roles or anything like that. You're not going to be playing as arrow spray and sitting in the backline like as an anchor or a backline weapon because you're just throwing. That's not what you're supposed to do. But and then the Rapid Blaster Pro, which is a prime example. It is a long-range, medium to long-range weapon that provides consistent damage and has a special and a tactical that are both support-oriented, which are Toxic Mist and Ink Vac, which are both really support-oriented. You could also argue if you want to play this in the backline category, but I'd say it's more of a midline or support weapon just with its kit, and it doesn't really have the damage to it. I think it's a 3-shot damage or a 2-shot if you land directs over a lot of the other backline weapons that just do way more damage than you are. So that's why I have it in the support category. I think it's more of a support weapon, but like that's the type of weapons. Keeping the map your color is the main priority. A lot with these like these painting weapons, like the Sploosh and the NZAP as well. Like I have these down in the flex rolls, which we'll talk about, but like if you want to play the NZAP right now is probably one of the best support weapons in the game. Just because it paints incredibly well. You're able to get your ult so fast, and it is able to spam your special so much the entire game because you're constantly painting. And the Tacticooler is a great support ult, and you have Suction Bomb as well, which is really good. Just spamming your bombs, spamming your tacticals as much as possible, throwing out as many ults as possible, and then keeping the map your color, which is mainly a support's job or like a mid's job. And then you can kind of play it a mid. Like that's why there's four people on a team. Generally, you're going to want to have either 2 frontline / slayer weapons on a team, or like a support and a midline type weapon. You never really want 2 backline weapons. It can work. It's not really the worst thing ever, but it's kind of put some loopholes and kind of some weak points in your team comp with your weapon choices. But generally, like I said, you're going to want either the support or a mid-range type weapon, and then like 1 or 2 like of both of these roles of like a slayer or frontline of each. So it's kind of what you want. Ideally, you want like a mid-range, and ideally you want a support that just their pure job is just to paint and keep the map your team's colors to make it allow your team to move around a lot faster and a lot more efficiently, and just be able to spam ult as much as possible and tacticals as much as possible. Usually that's what you want, and then you usually want like a mid-range type weapon that has mid-range that usually has pretty consistent damage, but mainly just like a mid-range, like range for your team. That's not close range, and that's not really like incredibly far range, like a backline weapon or like a frontline weapon, something in between. That's usually what you want for like an ideal team comp for all 4 of your team. And you have a backline, you have a frontline type or a Slayer type weapon. That's usually what you want, but you can kind of work other ways, especially if you're solo queuing ranked. You're going to run into everything, so it comes down to what players are playing the weapon and what they know how to do, and how if they know how to actually play most of the time, especially in your solo queue ranked games, which is usually really hit or miss. It really is. Then you got like the stuff like the Splatter Shot Pro and like the 96 Scout. Like I said, mainly they're not really the incredibly good painting weapons, but they just give you a different range in your team. Like I was talking about, I wanted to cover this as well just before I move on to the last role. Like they're not really that good of painting weapons, but they do really consistent damage, and they have the medium range, which is what you're looking for. Just having different varying ranges so you can cover all bases with your team comp. That's kind of what they're there for. And there's some other ones like down in the flex, which I'll talk about in a little bit towards the end. Up next, we got Slayer / frontline weapons. These are the weapons that and the role on the team that pretty much is going to be playing either the objective or just playing like just to get kills. Now, if I were to like distinguish between a couple of these weapons, like the ones that are playing the objective, which they all can play the objective, like with these weapons, you can play Blaster and all these other weapons, and you don't have to really play like a Slayer and just go for kills. You can play the objective. That's the good thing about a lot of these weapons. But generally, your frontline and your Slayer weapons are the weapons that are close range, that you want to be taking 1v1s, you want to be getting up in people's face, or they're like weapons that are really only meant to be doing that. Like you're not really going to be playing. I mean, I guess the Glooga Dualies are a medium range type weapon, but like you're not really going to be playing them as like a medium range weapon over a lot of the other stuff. They're meant to be played like a Slayer or frontline weapon pretty much in all cases. So, like a prime example of like a Slayer weapon, like a pure Slayer weapon, is the Blaster, which is the weapon I use the most. At least my main role and my main thing I play is Blaster, and I had to just be the Slayer of the team. You go for kills, and your main priority is to just kill as much on the enemy team as possible. If not really going in and feeding, like there's a difference between feeding and playing smart, which is a lot of people get confused about. But like getting as many kills as possible and as smart as possible, meaning either like trading a 2v1, which is always good, killing 2 people on the enemy team and then getting yourself killed, which is always great because you're killing more people and you're just trading yourself, which is really good. It gives your team an automatic 1-person advantage. Or just if they have like a backline weapon on their team, your main job as the Slayer type weapon is to go after whoever their backline is. So if just for example, like if anybody on the enemy team had like a Charger or like a Splatling on the enemy team, my job and one of my #1 priorities, along with killing everybody and killing as much as possible on the enemy team, would be to pressure out and go after their backline weapons to give my team more ease to move around the map and less pressure on my team, and keep them as dead and keep them like kill them as much as possible pretty much. That's pretty much what the Slayer's job is. Like I'm not talking about like going in and just feeding. Like there's like I said, there's a huge line across of just feeding and trying to get kills, but you just end up getting killed and you don't do anything the entire game. And then going in and actually playing a Slayer like how you're supposed to and actually getting kills. Clean kills, not like 1v1s, not trading, like a clean kill on the enemy team, or like trading a 1v1, or like a 1 for 3 or something, like killing 3 people on the enemy team and then you end up getting killed. Those are always good trades and they automatically give your team an advantage anyways. So just like I think the only main problem people have is they just end up feeding. They want to play a Slayer and they play a Slayer weapon or play like a Slayer with a lot of those type of weapons, and then they just end up feeding and they don't do anything. They'll have maybe like 5 kills in like a 10-minute game, and then they'll do nothing the entire game apart from feed, and then they'll just put their team at so much of a disadvantage. Or they just try to kill everything and they just pretty much neglect everything else. They'll only trade, and that's pretty much what they do the entire game. They'll kill somebody on the enemy team, but either somebody else kills them, or they get killed by the same person, and they just end up trading kills the entire game, which does not give your team an advantage at all. So, and it pretty much makes the game a 3v3. So you're doing nothing and you're giving your team no advantage. So not really one of the most difficult roles to play, but just takes some common sense, and it does take some skill and some game awareness to make it work. And it's something that you get the hang of when you play it and kind of play that way. And then Frontline, which is mainly a lot of more of the shorter range weapons, like pretty much the same weapons that you can use for this type of role. You can also play it like a Frontline with like some of the mid tier type weapons. Like it's not really locked as all, but it's mainly the person that's trying to push objectives, trying to like mainly their main focus is the objective. Like if you're playing tower control or if you're playing clams or zones, like that's your main goal is the objective and winning over the objective to win the game. That's usually what the front line is. Like I said, there's 4 people on a team, but there's only 3 roles. So like I said, it comes down to what your team really has and what your team wants to play. You can have one blast. You can have like somebody playing blaster as a slayer, and then you can have like somebody playing like a front line, playing like a dualies or something. That's just 100% their main job is to go for the objective and play the objective pretty much and try to cap the objective or whatever it may be, whatever mode you're playing currently, or like Rainmaker or whatever else. Then you have like your other 2 roles, which is usually like a mid or a support, and then you have your backline, obviously. So that being said, we also have flex weapons. Now these are the weapons that don't really fit into a specific role by themselves. You could argue some of these other weapons that I do have placed into these categories do fit, can maybe be flex weapons, but like overall, the reason why I have a lot of these weapons in these categories is because there might be some you can maybe flex in different roles, but it's not really going to be something that you're going to be doing at all. Even especially if you want to win. Like the weapons I have down in the flex / multiple roles are weapons that can fit into multiple roles. Like for example, the Splatoon, which you can play as a support weapon because it paints incredibly well. But you could also play as like a Slayer type weapon because you can play it that way because it paints really well. And it does have decent damage. And it does have the ability, especially with the ult it has, which is Crab and Burst Bomb, which you can actually be played more of like a Slayer type playstyle. But like at the same time, that's why I have it in the flex role, because you could also play it as a support because it paints incredibly well. And you can kind of use the Crab as more of like a backline / medium range type of special to give your team more support instead of playing aggressive or whatever, and it depends how you use your ult and how you play. So why a lot of these weapons are down here, like a lot of these can play like either like more than one role pretty much. So the same like the NZAP, for example. The NZAP is one of the best painting weapons in the game, probably the best support weapon in the game right now. But like you could also play it as like a Slayer weapon, just spamming ults and just trying to kill as much as possible on an enemy team. It'll be more difficult to do because your damage really isn't the best. There's a lot better options for like Slayer weapons, but you can do it if you know what you're doing. So that's why I kind of have that weapon in the flex category as well. So same with like the Splatter Shot, like it paints incredibly well and it has a pretty good like ult that can be aggressive or like more of a support ult with Trizuka and stuff like that. So that's why I have that here as well. I think the only weapon that I really don't even know would really fit into the game, which maybe you guys can actually let me know in the comments down below, would be the Bamboozler. It lost main power up for Splatoon 3, which gave it more damage, I think, in Splatoon 2. So it doesn't really do enough damage to be a Slayer, but it paints okay, so you can maybe use it as like a mid or like a frontline weapon. That's kind of why I have it in the flex roles, because I don't really know where it would really fit into the game. It's one of like the only weapons right now in the game that I don't actually know where it would really fit into. You can kind of play it in maybe like 1 or 2 roles and get away with it, but I don't know. Like apart from the rest of the weapons, like you kind of know what they're going to be playing. They can play like multiple roles, but apart from that, you kind of know what they're going to be doing. Like same with the sloshing machine. You can play it as more of like a mid-range weapon because it does have medium range, but you could also play as like a Slayer weapon because it is incredibly good at getting kills, and it's one of the best weapons right now, at least in the current game. At least when I'm making this, like, just to go, like, pure aggressive and just play aggressive as fuck. And just play for kills, pretty much, and play really aggressive. That's another thing with the Slayers, too. Like, they're going to be technically the team, like, the person on the team that's most aggressive. They're going to be the ones that are trying to start 1v1s, winning 1v1s, and trying to start fights. That's usually what the Slayer is usually doing as well. I don't know if I had mentioned that earlier, but... And the sloshing machine can do that pretty well. It has a little bit more range, so you can take fights at more medium range, but you can still play it as like a Slayer weapon. That's why I kind of have it in a lot of these roles. But I'm not going to really explain a lot of these other ones. If you guys would like an entire list of like how these weapons fit into their certain roles and explaining them and breaking them down individually in depth and talking about like their kits and stuff and how they fit into their roles, if that would be a video you guys would want, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be down to do a video for that for you guys, depending on how this video does as well. I also have a tier list I actually threw out on the channel a couple days ago, at least when I'm making this. So if you guys want to know what weapons are really good right now, go check out the tier list. I should have a link to that on screen at the end of the video, or it should be live on the channel right now. So if you're wondering what weapons are good, go check out the tier list. Threw that up a couple days ago. But apart from that, hopefully that helped you guys and gave you guys some more insight into the game and kind of where every weapon fits in and what they're really supposed to be doing and how to pretty much build a team. Like, just for an example too, like I'll build a team for right now. I'll take like another 2 minutes to build a team, like an ideal team comp that you're probably going to be seeing in like comps. So it depends on the mode too. Like, it comes down to the mode. Like, that's another thing you're going to, like, people are going to have to take into consideration, like whatever mode is in rotation and whatever mode you're trying to play. Team comps and everything can vary a lot depending on like whatever mode you're trying to play. Like if you're playing clams or tower or zones and stuff like that, there's going to be a lot of different variations and a lot of different weapons you're going to want to be running depending on the mode. But like, for example, let's try to make a team comp here out of all these roles for like tower control. So like for my Slayer, we have 4 people on a team, right? So for my Slayer, which would probably be like what I would play anyways, I'm going to have Blaster because it's really good in tower control. You usually want to have a Blaster or something that can usually try to take towers, and something that's really good in tower control on the team. That'll be my Slayer for this game. That's what I'm going to have like as a team comp, as like an example team comp. That'll be the Slayer, going to be trying to start fights and just killing as much stuff on the enemy team as possible. Up next, as like a backline weapon, like keep in mind too, it all depends on whatever maps are in rotation too. There's a bunch of maps. That's another thing I forgot to mention, like whatever maps are in rotation too, because some weapons are better on some maps and some are worse on others. So you got to take that into mind too if you're trying to build like an actual team, and if you're like 4 stacking ranked or whatever, or if you're just solo queuing, it doesn't really matter that much, but it matters more if you're trying to build like an actual comp, if you're like a 4 stack or whatever. Like as a backline weapon, like I'll put Explosure. Like this will be our backline for this team. Gonna be the anchor for the team, doing like really solid damage. Has I think was it Point Sensor and I think Ink Storm. So really consistent damage, a really good support ult. Just your overall long range damage that's going to be pressuring the enemy team from range. That's going to be really consistent with the Explosure for this team in towers. And then like as the last 2, I would like, at least for like my ideal team comp, something that can paint really well, I'd probably throw like an NZAP 85 on this team for like a support weapon, because it's just one of the best things right now as like an example team. Just mainly as the support, throwing down as many tactical coolers and specials and grenades and bombs or whatever as possible. Just keeping the map the team's color, allowing the Blaster, which doesn't really paint that well, and I guess the Explosure too, if it needs to move around and get different positions and take different angles, allow them to swim around the map and keep the map their color, so they're allowed to position and move a lot more freely. And then probably on this team, I'd probably put like a mid-range type weapon, which I think one of the best, like the most average type mid-range type weapon would be like a Splattershot Pro. Like this would be like an ideal team comp, like at least an example. Like I said, it would depend on whatever mode it is, or like map, but like as like an example for like a team comp, like this would be a perfect one. You have your mid-range type weapon in the Splattershot Pro. You have a support that's just there to paint and throw out ults and that type of stuff with the NZAP 85. You got your backline weapon, and then you got your Slayer type weapon. So as like an example type team, that's kind of what you want. Like I said, this can vary. You can have 2 backline weapons. You can have 2 like support weapons or whatever. But usually the most successful teams are the ones that don't have 2 backline weapons, because it puts a pretty bad disadvantage on your team, because you have 2 backline same range weapons that either take a long time to charge up for their damage and can get dove easily by the enemy team, or it just makes your team lack another certain role. That's what you really need. So it's kind of what it really is. If this guide helped you guys, or if this video helped you guys, let me know in the comments down below. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. If there's some stuff I did not talk about or I'm missing in this video as well, let me know in the comments down below, and let everybody know. That'd be really cool. Subscribe, share the video, really appreciate it. I should have a tier list video on the screen right now, and I should have some more Splatoon videos on the way for you guys. So if this video does well too, if you guys want like an entire like breakdown of all the weapons right now in the game, like why they fit into a certain role, and like discussing their entire kit and everything, and why they fit into a certain role, like going into each weapon like in depth and talking about each weapon individually. You guys want a video like that, let me know as well. We'll see how this video does. I might end up doing that in the near future. So peace out, everybody, and thanks for stopping by, and thanks for watching.